Welcome back to the Blindsiders. I am Ben here with Brian Dillon to break down the penultimate episode of Survivor 50. We are 1 week out from the finale of Survivor 50, and we are live right now after the episode for the first time all season to talk about a double boot episode here and a tragic boot episode here where we have both Devons and then Suri ending up leaving in the 7th and 6th positions. Probably two of the biggest characters of the season. One could argue about like the finale we're headed into with this final five in terms of the intensity, but definitely a lot to break down here tonight.
Weird episode, weird edit. I figured there might be a double elimination this episode, but I kind of had a panic attack when I looked at the clock and it was 8:30 and we were heading into tribal. I didn't know what that meant for later in the night, but weird episode. Having an episode like this with Devons and Suri going home at the same time felt a little bit weird from like an editing production standpoint, which we've always been praising all season. But yeah, weird night, sad night. I think there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, I kind of figured that this would be how they would do it just because they've done it in the past with less people. Less time. So it's like half an hour episodes. So I wasn't terribly surprised, but my team from our draft is officially gone. It's been for a while, pretty obvious that I was going to be the last person in our 3-person draft, but it's official now. Suri's torch is snuffed. My torch is snuffed. I got my Kasaya buff on in her honor. Great game this time. 19th person voted off. That's usually the winner at that point. So, she couldn't have done much more. Ozzy sunk her game, unfortunately. The Survivor producers sunk her game, unfortunately. But what else is new for Suri's time in Survivor, huh?
Yeah,
at least this was a natural vote out for her, though, right? At least the way she actually went out wasn't like any nonsense.
True, but I will say that the twist where Ozzy got put on a different beach that was tough.
Yep.
Yeah. This is the first time that Suri has received the majority of the votes at a tribal council in her entire career. Her 6 seasons of Survivor is the first time in history where she's received a majority of votes, which is a crazy statistic. So,
technically, in Game Changers, she would have received the majority of votes. Technically,
I guess if you're like, oh, they would have revoted and then all had to vote for her by default. But yeah. I think that's a little pedantic.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, she's a legend. Better than Tony and Sandra, that's up to you to decide. Certainly Aubrey said that, and it is in Aubrey's interest to position Suri as the Survivor god so that her moving against her is respected even more should she make the final 3.
Yeah, it's a weird... I still feel headed in this finale very kind of weird with like where we're going, because like I expected the way that we were kind of finishing the season to be like, if it's not Suri, it's going to be whoever gets credit for Suri being the one that is like the painted as the winner, if we're going to have kind of a mishmash of also rans in the end game, which is what it kind of feels like. But like, it felt like they gave most of the credit to Rizzo, which is like a weird, I think, decision, because I don't think Rizzo is winning the season. So like, what are we? I think still from a narrative and a storytelling perspective, it is a very weird kind of decision here to like not really have anybody in the final 5 who is like played a super like impressive game that like feels like it's being sold to us.
I think that Aubrey will get the credit for this ultimately. I think because it was like positioned as Suri versus Aubrey, and Aubrey ultimately came out on top. I think that Aubrey kind of has talked about it in this episode too, how Rizzo is a rat, and I think that's more of like his position in this. Will he get to the final three? I don't know, but if he does, I think they're setting us up to be like, oh, he screwed over his two allies who happen to be two icons of the show. So everyone's like, fuck Rizzo. You know what I mean?
Rizzo. We talked about Rizzo just being shit on and kind of getting a bad rap overall. I don't think that this episode is going to help his case, even though he, in both of these episodes, probably made the right move overall for his game, even if I don't think that he's going to win at this point. People just hate Rizzo and don't want to acknowledge they don't want to acknowledge proper gameplay because there's somebody that they don't like or find annoying. That's reality TV. That's television. That's fandom. That's normal. It sucks. But Rizzo's the first player to play. He's over 40 days at this point between the past two seasons. So he's played almost a regular full season of Survivor and then some, which is the first person to do that in 10 seasons.
Yeah,
so.
Survivor Australia, number of days.
That's
a real throwback.
I don't think he wins. I think he's kind of destroyed. I think that through maybe no fault of his own, his path forward to win is just not. It's not anything that's going to beat. I think that he's the GOAT. We talked about it last week. I think he's the other GOAT with Joe now. It just makes to it. Not having that idol be a factor at the end again, I think is a big issue for people respecting his gameplay on the island.
Yeah, I don't know what the perception is here, because this is kind of like a conversation we had through 49, and the conversation that a lot of people are having through 49 is like this bluffing the idol play won't work with All Stars, right? That's like the line that kept on getting said, where this idea that he could just keep saying he was going to play the idol and then not play it to get the vote off of him, but it is working again. So I don't know why, I guess, the idea of converting an idol into a season of safety, because every time somebody comes for you, you're just like, okay, well, I guess I'm going to play my idol tonight. And then everyone's like, okay, I guess we need to find an alternative boot then. And then the vote flips. And by the time you get to tribal council, the vote is off him and he holds the idol. That feels like literally the most optimal use of an idol possible. And for some reason, I think there is a reticence to give somebody credit for using an idol in that way, because I think the idea is you need to use an idol to idle somebody out and make a big singular play, as opposed to use it as a tool to progress yourself through a season.
I definitely agree with you. I think it's circumstantial to what's happening in the game, the context of where the game is at this point. And now it just feels like that idol, nobody has gone after him. I even feel like with the Devon's vote, that was just something that the edit team was able to throw together to make it seem like there's some sort of conflict there. Because the only reason to explain the incredibly weird, I think the first 30 minutes of this episode were very, very strange. It just felt so quick when we were at tribal, and I assume it's probably because it was just so straightforward that there was really not too much to work with, because to then not have anybody vote or anybody really kind of seriously bring up Rizzo again for this vote. I know Tiffany was talking about it, but clearly he was not the actual person that was being considered heading into tribal. It was Aubrey and Sari. I feel like now, once the idol officially becomes really kind of not a threat, I think that it ruins his game, because you can play it even like Tony did, where he was using idols that were no longer even valid and playing that up for himself. I think he was in a position of that game where he was such a huge threat, and that was the only thing pretty much keeping him alive at that point. To have Rizzo here, it just seems like his threat level has just gone so down that the idol itself, it just doesn't matter. And I think that's why ultimately if we're going off of that, I don't think that he is going to get any sort of winning credit at this point. And I also I think that Tiffany, Aubrey, and Jonathan all know that they can't bring the two others with, or at least one other of that trio along with them. Because I feel like that's like that is the game now. It's Jonathan, Aubrey, or Tiff who's going to win Survivor. If Joe or Rizzo win Survivor, I like less so Rizzo than Joe. But if like Joe wins this season, then I don't know what we're doing. I think that we like the production and editing, who we praised a lot, need to kind of look at what occurred in this season, unless it was intentional. Because even Aubrey and Tiffany's edit, the fact that we have Aubrey and Tiffany going into a final five with the edit that they had, like two pretty abysmal pre-merges. Aubrey more so than Tiffany, but Aubrey had a horrific pre-merge and lucked out getting the Billie Eilish Boomerang Idol. I guess she got Genevieve out, even though that didn't really seem to help her game at that point. Like pretty awful. And she looked miserable. And then now she is like who I think is probably the most likely winner at this point. It's wild. And maybe her game was not that good at that point. They had nothing to edit it out around, or maybe it was, and she didn't get a favorable edit. I'd probably be more upset if I was Tiffany with the edit I got. If I'm here again at the end, her second final five in a row for games she's played, and like her edit was that bad early on. I think some of those people that were calling about Zach Brown getting more airtime than her, I think that there is that you have the right to be upset about that now.
Yeah, very odd.
Yeah, I think, I'm going to try to show a comment. Let's see how it says. Rizzo's playing the same game as he did in 49. His play, the idle threat, continues to work. And I think definitely that's true. I think that it's a little bit this season more than last season. Like people weren't necessarily gunning for Rizzo, but I think this was the round that if you were going to take Rizzo out, you probably could have done it because he's kind of put himself into this, position where he's like, well, I don't have to play it ever. I can keep bluffing it. And now they could have gotten it off. Tiff was probably, saying the right stuff, but it just doesn't feel like anybody on the island thinks that Rizzo can win the game. And I think that's the bigger part of it is, and it might just be that he's young. I mean, he's 26. He comes off younger. He comes off like 21. And no one's going to respect him as much. Ben, I played Durham Survivor way back in the day when I was 21. People don't respect you that much when they're like 10 years older than you, let alone like how much older everyone else is this season. And I think Rizzo's falling into that a little bit. I think we've seen in the exit press that people were saying Rizzo just lays around. He's really sickly, and even today we got people being like, Rizzo didn't even eat his chicken breasts. How dare he? So I think there's a lot stacking up in the Rizzo is the GOAT of the season, like Dylan said, next to Joe. I think that's a great read, Dylan, on this.
Yeah. Yeah. We also got the line, I think, from Aubrey, who was like, all these like older school players like don't want to like give $2 million to a kid that they don't they find annoying or whatever, however she phrased it. And that does, I think, track with like what we talked about last week in particular, and then also like kind of what we've seen come out in the last few weeks. So yeah, I guess with that in mind, did Jonathan make a mistake here? Because for Jonathan, his final three that he's seemingly working towards is him, Rizzo, and Joe. And I think that Rizzo and Joe are also working towards that final three. That feels like we talked about this last week with the Aussie move. Like that feels like the final three that had kind of solidified. And from this episode, it felt like it was clear that they had like tacked on Aubrey as a fourth. But like that's like the three within the four that they kind of are working towards, which I think is correct for all three of them. I think that's the final three that all of them should probably be working towards. So with that in mind, is taking out Sari here over Aubrey like the objectively correct play? Because for me, as they were having this discussion and like Sari was making her play, I was like, this doesn't even feel like the pitch that makes like like, yeah, the framing of Aubrey was like a really cool play by Suri, and it would have been really cool if it paid off. But for me, there is like a really rational reason for them to want to vote out Aubrey, which is like Aubrey can win individual immunity, Aubrey can win fire making challenge. She won the fire making challenge and go wrong to get herself into the final three. Suri has a 0-for-3 record in fire making challenges in her career. She's never won an individual immunity challenge through 6 seasons of Survivor. It feels like it was almost like, and this is kind of why I had pitched the like Suri winning path before. It doesn't make a ton of sense for you to vote Suri out at 6 when you could just vote her out at 5 or 4. And if they vote out Aubrey, they still have a 3 versus 2 advantage over Tiffany and Suri. And it's almost like more likely, in my opinion, that they end up being the final 3. Whereas now Aubrey has a chance to win final 4 immunity or fire making and sneak her way in there and probably win.
I think you're right. I think I think maybe the fear of knowing that Suri is almost basically is a guaranteed win if she does find a way to get there and she happens to win immunity, happens to somehow make fire and win. I feel like maybe that's just like where you're going with Aubrey. You feel like maybe you have a chance where Suri, if she's there in the end, you don't have a chance and you know it. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's just scary. The scary part. And maybe obviously Joe's always been very good at challenges. Joe has been great at challenges this entire episode. So I think that's maybe the logic there. But I didn't really consider what you're saying until now, because I'm obviously, as a viewer, just so focused on like just how good of a game Suri is actually playing that I mean that could have been a pitch I'm surprised it wasn't a pitch for her. Even though, like you said, the Aubrey, her twisting around who told her onto Aubrey was very cool. And if that worked, like an all-time type move, like very, very smart. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. I didn't consider before, but I think that she's like a guaranteed win at this point. And I think that's maybe the scariest thing to all of them. And that's why they went with that.
Yeah, it's probably the case. But Ben, I think you're spot on there. Like it kind of even, we watched Australian Survivor versus the World. Spoilers for that. Parv brought Suri. She probably could have beaten Suri, but like she also probably in the back of her mind's like, Suri's not ever going to win a challenge. There's nothing I have to worry about. If I have to get Suri out, I can get Suri out. And I think that, like you said, Ben, Aubrey, she can definitely win immunity or fire, but I think that Tiff is going to be the next big target. So she's probably going to be in line to potentially win fire if there is fire. We don't know what the fans voted for, though I have a sinking suspicion that it probably was for fire based on some of the results we've had so far. So I don't know. I don't know if it's the right move, but Dylan, like you said, Suri's just such a big target that it's like, if you lose to Suri because you didn't take her out here, you're never going to be able to sleep at night again.
Yeah, well, I think, I don't know. I do think it does come down to that, where it's just like Suri is just so good, and like they know that she's going to win. Where like it's almost like you're kind of playing into a position where even if you're more likely to lose, the loss will feel less devastating almost. Like, I don't know. It is kind of like a weird, like, psychological thing. But like, I'm a very like, try to, push out the like psychological blocks and try to view everything as objectively as possible and like try to make the most win equity optimal decision. And if I'm in their position, I'm just like looking at Suri, looking at Aubrey, and I'm like, okay, Aubrey, even if she has a 60% chance to beat me in a final tribal council, like even if she has a 40% chance to beat me in a final tribal council, is Suri's chance of winning immunity and or fire higher than Aubrey's chance of beating me in a final tribal council? I think the answer is a very definitive no. So that's just like the path that I would take. Yeah. Like I think Aubrey is like considerably more likely to win a final tribal council against Jonathan, Rizzo, Joe than Suri is to beat the three of them in the immunity challenge. So it's just, I don't know. It feels very cut and dried to me that this was an incorrect move that likely will lose the Jonathan, Rizzo, Joe trio of the game.
Yeah, and I look forward to that. I look forward to watching it play out that way, because I definitely think you're right there. I think that they just don't necessarily maybe respect Aubrey as much as they should. And that's dangerous. I mean, Aubrey's kind of at her best when she's a little underappreciated and, overlooked. So,
I mean, they've acknowledged it verbally, in confessionals and talking to each other, that Aubrey has been this like tag along kind of like middle floater player. And I mean, who knows? Maybe if that is the view of the jury and the people that are there, maybe that is where Aubrey is unable to win, is if they all view her as a floater and they don't respect that. I feel like the players on that island have a very different perception of what we have gotten in the edit at home, for better or for worse. And like I don't know how necessarily that will play out in the final travel. That it could go the exact way we think it could go when we get to that point, or like I don't think Joe is winning this game, so like I don't mean like that, but I don't know. Yeah, I guess I don't know overall how Aubrey is going to be perceived, everybody there, because I feel like a lot of the people that are on that tribal barely worked with Aubrey or were burned by Aubrey, even though Aubrey was kind of in survival mode at that point. I don't know. We sat here 2 weeks ago saying it did not feel like Aubrey was all of a sudden on this winner's arc. We sat here like 4 or 5 weeks ago saying I think Tiffany is dead in this game. So like I have no idea. I don't know nothing no more.
I think that if Aubrey is the winner, it won't be like everyone is impressed by Aubrey and wants her to win. It'll be they don't want a new era player to win. That's kind of what it feels like. It feels like we have an extremely heavily old school jury, like 8 out of the 11 jurors or something like that are old school players, and there's like an anti-new era bias coming into this season, and they would vote for like a bottle of ketchup if it played between seasons 1 and 40 or 1 and 39 over somebody who played in season 40 onward. So
I feel like somebody too that's in like D's position. I feel like the game there was like pre-Blood Moon and post-Blood Moon. I feel like the game has changed so much from where we were pre-merge, pre-Blood Moon. Like it just feels like we're in such a different game. So like I don't know how that will view for D, if all she's seeing is what's going on at Tribal, and then she's hearing from Ozzy how much a lot of these people suck. And like I don't know if Ozzy's propping up Aubrey. Obviously, I feel like he's definitely shitting on Rizzo, but I don't feel like he's propping up Aubrey. I don't feel like he's propping up Jonathan. Like I don't know what Coach and Chrissy's perception of what's going on is, whether they were going to stick by Jonathan or they actually respect what's going on with Aubrey. And like Coach and Aubrey tried to work together pre-merge. I just feel like it's like I said, I feel very comfortable ruling Rizzo and Joe out. I just don't know how the rest of the three are going to be viewed.
Yeah, I don't know. It really is feeling like if Rizzo, Joe, Jonathan is the final three, and like Mark the Chicken walks out of the jungle and sits down as the fourth person in Final Tribal Council, he like sweeps the jury. Like it literally just feels like that's the narrative right now.
You're saying. You're saying the Chicken beats all three of them?
Yes, because Mark the Chicken was famously in Survivor Co. Wrong, and he's an old school player.
I see you're saying.
That's literally what it feels like to me. It feels like there's like such an anti-new era bias with the bulk of the old era players in this cast that they'll literally vote for anybody over a new era player.
Jonathan is kind of like a adopted old school player.
True, that is true. Yeah.
People he aligned with in the way he plays.
Boston Rob's mentee.
Yep.
So,
could be. I mean,
because Tiffany and Aubrey, I feel like Tiffany and Aubrey started in a very similar spot, entering the merge. I think Aubrey was in a worse spot. I think they took two different paths and ended up winding up at like with the same kind of like threat level and things that they've done in this game with two totally different things. Like I feel like Aubrey has been involved, or from what we've seen, has driven more votes that have gone her way. Whereas obviously Tiffany has kind of like, she integrated herself with Suri. I think she's like very liked by everybody. She's obviously been great in challenges. Like I feel like you could have the coaches viewing Aubrey and viewing Tiffany there at the end and saying Tiffany won more challenges. Like I'm going to vote for Tiffany because that's like that's an old school type of like way to play it. But to your point, if it literally is an old school, new school versus new era rivalry. Yeah, I still think I put all three of them at like very, very equal levels of being able to win. I think that it all depends on like what Jonathan's able to take credit for and convince the jury. I feel like this could be a very important, because like I said, some of the reports are that people are very salty with each other after this season, which I know is not the most unheard of thing when it comes to returning player seasons, but I don't know if that means people are pissed, don't like that. I mean, we don't technically know who the winner is yet. Obviously, the people that vote probably have a really good idea of who the winner is overall. They've been talking about it all upon the roast, they know. I don't know. I don't know. I feel very lost because, like I said, 2-3 weeks ago, we were in a totally different spot than this. We were ruling Jonathan out, saying Jonathan's pretty much like destroying his game. Aubrey wasn't even somebody we were considering at that point because she was still kind of like the lost, sad puppy on the island. And Tiff was really just fighting to survive each week, not necessarily being able to make ground on her strategic game. And like all of that just completely changed with the things that happened. A lot of that has to do with the twist, obviously. I think a lot of that has to do with just really poor edits we got for them. And like people would say you can watch Survivor and not pay attention to the edit. Like I feel like you can't analytically watch Survivor and fully understand what's going on and not pay attention to the edit, because it's like the whole point is to tell us a story that's specifically happening. And it feels like we were told one thing to have like to prop up these other players to have the rug pulled out from us at the end here. And like I would be happy with the Jonathan win. I'd be happy with an Aubrey win. I'd be happy with the Tiffany win. I'd be happy with the Rizzo win. I wouldn't be happy with the Joe win. But like I feel like that and the only reason I would be happy with all those is because that's where we are at this point, where if you told me a lot of these people won 3, 4, 5 weeks ago, I would say you're insane. This season is the worst season ever. And so part of what has happened since then has worked, but it's just very strange that this was the route they wanted to go. And I think the editing in this episode, like I said, the pacing for the first 30 minutes was like really off. Like it was just a weird episode to have Devins and Sari both go. And if it was because the votes were so obvious, then like I guess that is what it is. But then like were they really that protected then before this with Ozzy and Rizzo, and then with Devins and his idol and all that? Like was like, were they that obvious before this, or was it just circumstantial to where we ended up at like this spot in the game? It was a weird episode. It was a weird
Devins
episode.
has been fighting for his life since for like the last 2-3 episodes. So like I think for me coming into this episode, I think I said last week I was like 90% sure that Devins was coming in 7th place. So like that to me was obvious. But like the 6th place, like Sari wouldn't have gone home if Tiffany didn't win immunity, from what we've been told, right? Like it would have likely been Tiffany. So like I don't even think that Sari was really in too much immediate danger up until like probably like a half hour before tribal council at the final 6. Like I don't think there was really a ton of movement to get her out until that point. And we kind of, I guess, see a little bit of why, where like Rizzo kind of, elucidates why, which is like she has this kind of mob boss, like Godfather-esque energy, where like if you even like think about voting her out, you get clipped, which is what has happened to everybody else this season. And they've had to like kind of, and even here, right? Like Sari was able to like kind of read the tea leaves before even having a conversation with anyone as to where the vote was likely going to go, just based off of having the information that Tiffany was the target from the other 4. Like she could kind of see the lines drawn there. and she said that she had a sinking feeling in her stomach after the immunity challenge, that she was gonna be the one to go. So yeah, I don't know. It is like it's a very odd episode to like kind of jam like two of the biggest stars of the season's boots into one 90-minute episode and like kind of like yada yada and rush over both of them. And like it felt, like you said, Dylan, the pacing felt very weird.
I'm glad we got more time driven towards Suri at the end though, whereas the Devons felt like very rushed, felt very like that was just bang bang. But there's, like we talked about, there's probably a good chance Devons plays again, whereas I feel confident saying Suri will not be playing again. She's like got to be right. She's encroaching 60, so I don't think that she will be. She might play Traders again. I just don't think
Traders all players.
She's going to play Survivor again. Which overall, sad ending for Suri, but similar to Ozzy, really kind of like that has been her story. And like not everybody can be Super Bowl champions, right? Dan Marino can't be a Super Bowl champion. One of the greats. one of the all-time greats just couldn't get it done. I think that sometimes that's people's stories. I'd rather be an all-time great who couldn't get it done than somebody who's completely forgot about altogether. So Suri is still the GOAT. I can't put her top 4. Just can't put a person without a win in the top 4. It's just not, it doesn't make sense. But she's sitting there at 5, 6, 4, like without a doubt.
Yeah. And I really, agree with Brent in the comments. This is on Ozzy more than it's on Suri. Once again, like you said, Ben, Suri gets a little bit unlucky here with Tiff winning immunity. Very unlucky that Jonathan and Joe can't spell. Inconceivable is a tough word. E before I. That's rare. It's tough. I get it.
Well, it's I before E except after C, right? It's like it's
right. So yeah, it's it's a tough word. Joe even said he has to go back to school, but I did love that all of them were like, "Oh, it's inconceivable," but they're all like, "How do you spell that?"
Yeah.
So, got to give Tiff a lot of credit here. 4 people working against her, and she still won. That's awesome.
Really impressive win. Tiff has been very, very impressive the past 3 weeks. Everything. Like even if she hasn't necessarily been driving votes but I think that she's been involved where she's need to be involved, and obviously she's been winning immunity, and so she's very, very impressive. I'm glad. Like I was shitting on her a couple weeks ago, and I do feel like rightfully so. But since then, she's really turned it around. So I'm glad we got Tiff. I'm glad we're being able to see her play this. She could still win. She very much. I personally do still think I put her below Jonathan. I think it's Aubrey, Jonathan, Tiff for me right now. But like I said, they're all bunched up in their own tier. And then Rizzo and then Joe are the 2 tiers below it. So it all depends on what is pushed at Final Tribal and what the jury's perception is. And like, do we think Suri is upset with Rizzo? I have gotten the impression based on how Suri respects the game that she would not vote for Rizzo just because he didn't back her here. And like, I'm assuming Tiffany was the one who voted with Suri, right? So that could also be a knock on Tiffany. It's very strange. I feel like a lot of the times we can get a decent read on juries when you're heading into this point, whereas I feel like now I don't know. I just don't think they are going to push for Rizzo and get a vote there. I almost kind of feel like there's more of a chance for Joe to get a vote from somebody like Coach or somebody like Christy than there is for Rizzo to get a vote from anybody else that's there. Like maybe Suri, right? But it seems like Suri thinks incredibly, incredibly highly of Aubrey based on her confessional when she was voting. So I don't know if that equals a vote, but it's something.
Yeah, I think that Suri probably votes for Rizzo in a Rizzo, Jonathan, Joe final 3, but I think she probably would lean towards voting for Tiffany first and then Aubrey second. If I had to like hazard a guess, I like kind of what she would be thinking. Yeah, which is again why I think that like the final three that like those three guys should be pushing for is the final three together, as like kind of the less respected three players, new era, like kind of probably all three have like uphill battles in certain ways with the jury. That really like is why that this move I think against Suri doesn't make a ton of sense to me. But yeah.
I also don't think that like Rizzo will get credit for it again. Just like I felt like last week, he's not getting credit for Ozzy. Yeah, these moves did have to happen if Rizzo was going to win, but you can't be coattailing again. You have to be the leader of these plans. And, everybody's the hero of their own story. So I'm sure Rizzo is thinking like, I did this. I voted off Ozzy. I voted Suri, but I think that Jonathan will get the Ozzy credit. Maybe Aubrey will. And then this week, probably Aubrey will get the Suri credit.
Which is interesting because Aubrey was completely inconsequential in Suri going home, other than just being the other target.
Yeah.
It's very interesting there. And again, like if we're looking at trying to build a strong, like coherent winner narrative, like you would think that you would want to give the winner credit in the narrative for taking out Suri when Suri's been like the player of the season. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say about the Devins vote too, is that really nobody gets credit for the Devins vote. It seems like everybody was just on board.
Yeah,
that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel similar with this Suri one, where I do think Rizzo deserves credit if credit needs to be given, but it also just feels like once it was thrown out there, this was like the vote that made the most sense. Not too much convincing had to be done, and that was that. I think Tiffany winning immunity deserves the most credit for Surigo.
Yeah, it is very odd. It definitely feels like this season, a lot of the season has just been like the story of how each person loses, and there's not really any coherent story as to why any one person is the winner. Which I guess like with the kind of theming of the season, where like a lot of the storytelling is around like correcting past mistakes and like kind of falling back on old bad habits or whatever. Like I guess that kind of makes sense, but it is I think leaving us in a position where we have this like flagship season 50. And we're probably going to get kind of an underwhelming winner. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting, I guess, narrative decision from the producers to like kind of tell the story of why 23 people lost instead of why one person won.
Yeah, no, I agree. Which is not what you want necessarily from an all-star season. I think, Tony and Sarah, Parvati and Jeremy, like those are better
Tyson
outcomes
even.
for Tyson. Yep, great point. Where it's like, okay, this person is the one in charge, or this person's playing the best game and they're winning because of it. That's better, but it doesn't feel like there's that player this season. Certainly having 24 players, that's a lot. Suri and Ozzy and Rizzo played great for most of the game, but the runway was a bit too long, so it didn't end up paying off for them.
So you can't really in so many different ways you can't downplay how catastrophically bad Ozzy was last week. And not only that, just like to his main ally Suri, who he says that he was going to take. Like I think the biggest mishap for Suri that happened with Ozzy spilling all that was once Ozzy went out, I think Suri was also really no longer shielded by another huge name and huge personality like Ozzy, where the next person up was Devins and he was immediately gone. And then now we get to this point where the only other person you can turn to for Tiffany is like, you have this person that's insanely good at challenges. We need to just get her out. Like she's well liked. We need to get her out. But like, if you have Ozzy and Suri sitting in this situation, I think a lot of people really feared Ozzy. Clearly, they wanted Ozzy out at that point. Even if we think that, or we know that Sari was the driving force behind Ozzy and really kind of operating his brain in his mouth whenever she was around him. I think like Ozzy could shield her in this vote, and then you have Rizzo sitting the next one with an idol, and they go after Rizzo, and they think the same thing that we think, is that she has no chance of winning immunity. I think like I felt narratively watching this that Sari far and away was the most satisfying winner to this season. I like that still can be true, but I definitely blinded myself much more to her incapability to perform in challenges and how that would affect her in the end. Because like I talked about, and we acknowledged like she would like winning fire and all that would guarantee a win for her, but also like getting to that point, I didn't really fully appreciate how impossible that would actually be. So maybe some of that when like I'm talking about the edit and all that, when you talk about a player like Sari and Ozzy, maybe that is more on me by being blinded by just how great they were playing in the moment. But I don't give the same credit for the Aubrey and the Tiffany edits of they were completely removed from this game for so long. And then we get to the merge, we get to the blood moon, and like all of a sudden they're just completely like they're integrated in the game. Tiffany links up with Sari. She makes the pact with Joe, which we have not heard about really at all since then. So like she found her new tribe. Meanwhile, Aubrey has kind of just been like, she has been the floater. She has been kind of really just fighting to not be the person voted out. And like they're now all of a sudden, once you take down one top dog, like they're all of a sudden the best players left in this game. Like I would be happy with an Aubrey and Tiffany win. I still think very highly on this season. I've enjoyed this season. I think the editing and the twist, which we've talked about, tirelessly, have been a little bit questionable. But I feel like if you want the actual from beginning to end story that we got, I feel like Jonathan is the most satisfying of the three. If you want to talk about where he was at the beginning and where he was at now, if you want somebody that has been like dominant, and like I don't think Jonathan's been dominant of like Tyson and Blood versus Water dominant, but I think that Jonathan has been on the right side of a lot more votes and has been involved with more of what has gotten us to this point in this game than Aubrey and Tiffany have. And so I feel like if he wins, I think it makes a lot more sense to the edit than it does for Aubrey and Tiffany when we get here. And I'm speaking like solely for the edit, solely what we have seen in the show. That's just me personally. I feel like Jonathan is the more satisfying of those three we just talked about. But that doesn't necessarily line up with any of the story that they're now telling these past 2 weeks. So I think that Jonathan is potentially somebody that goes out next at, we're at 5. So Jonathan would be the 5th player out. And I think that is like, to what you guys said, it's the story of how everybody didn't win this season. And then all of a sudden we're just sitting there with Tiff and Aubrey at the end, like, oh yeah, they happen to survive this long into this. And I don't know how to view that as like an actual season of Survivor. Like I've been entertained with this show a lot. We've had a lot of fun in this podcast this season. It's been like really good for our show. Our show has been really good for like the community. It's been great for Survivor. The viewership's doing great. But in terms of like watching strictly from like a gameplay perspective, from like an editing perspective, and like the actual game story being told, everything that I just said and everything we've talked about is kind of dog shit. And I feel like if we watch that in a non-Survivor 50 season, because I feel like you can only really compare it to what we have seen this season. I think if this was like a regular season when we saw this edit, it's like worse than the Erica edit for 41. It's just like none of it makes any sense. And so Jonathan, at least for me, makes the most sense from what we started with to where we get to now. But I feel like that Jonathan is not our winner for this season. I know I said that I probably maybe put him above Tiffany, but it just so obviously feels like it's Aubrey, or we could be sitting here, an hour into next week's episode. Aubrey's gone and Tiffany is the one that gets credited with the Aubrey kill, and like that's it. That's the game. It's whoever between Tiffany and Jonathan that wins in final immunity. Like that's like saying it out loud like that. It's so that's wild to me, and I don't know. Like, I don't know if that's what they were given, and like the cast just like was weird all season. It's very strange. It's very, very weird. Very, very weird that this is who is likely going to win. But like, I'll be happy because I'm a fan of Aubrey. I think Tiffany's been great, and I like Jonathan. So like, I will be happy with that.
It would be so ironic for Aubrey to go from the person people were having knockdown, drag out fights online over how she should have won Go Wrong to winning season 50 and everyone being like, I wish Aubrey didn't win this season. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I called it. I think earlier in the week I said it's like the monkey's paw, right? Of Survivor, where it's just you wish on the monkey's paw, and this is what happens, right? Like
hey, if the monkey paw wants to give me $2 million and people say that I played a bad game, I'll take that trade.
That's true. Yeah, I mean as they say, the check cash is just the same, no matter how many people online say you played a horrible game and didn't deserve it. And Michelle Fitzgerald was able to say that in Go Wrong, and like if the karma comes back and Aubrey ends up in the same position, then you know what, Aubrey will be an undeserving winner with $2 million in her bag.
Hey, maybe that's what the editors were getting at when they were like, I need to be more like Michelle. It was like, you're gonna get your wish, Aubrey.
Yeah,
you're gonna win, and everyone's gonna be mad.
Girls.
Yep. Oh man.
Yeah. I mean, it is quite interesting. Because like it is. I do think that no matter who wins, it is probably the worst winner story of a returning player season in the franchise's history to me. It's especially if Aubrey is the winner, and especially even if Tiffany is the winner also, when Tiffany had like 45 minutes of screen time in the first like 8 episodes of the season. That's probably even an overestimation. It's like of the 5 people in the finale, Joe has been treated like an open joke the entire season. Rizzo has been given a lot of credit, but also has been shit on, and it seems like he has zero respect from the majority of the players. Jonathan has been like kind of treated as like an anti-villain at best, and been on the wrong side of like 40% of the votes he's been involved in. Tiffany was invisible for the entire first half of the season. Aubrey, for the first like 2/3 to 3/4 of the season, was treated as like basically like her most positive screen time was when she was like silently in the background of a shot. Like it's just like, what are we? It feels like very like, what are we doing with this kind of group? And nothing really kind of feels cohesive. And like Dylan said, like Jonathan probably feels like the least incohesive of the options. But even then, it still feels very odd. It does feel quite weird. It's almost like 43-esque, where like in 43 you had like Cody, Carla, Jesse being like these 3 big, like larger than life characters, make the final 6 and then go out bam, 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 and we're left with like 3 people in the final 3 who are like, what? How did we get here? Whereas here it felt like Ozzy, Devins, and Suri were kind of those 3 people. And they don't go out, 6-5-4, but they go out 8-7-6. And now we're kind of left with 5 people where we're like, how did we get here?
Even 3 episodes into the season, Christian had like how much screen time? Christian was taking up 90% of the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And then Christian, and then all of a sudden Christian kind of like pretty much goes quiet. And then we see him get Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah.
And so it's
that makes sense because he went to every tribal council and he was like, pushing the vote for most of those tribal council. Like he was like the strategic force of the pre-merge. And then I would say Suri has been the strategic force of the post-merge. So I think at least that is like reasonable to have Christian have that narrative. But it just doesn't make sense for the 5 that we have here at the final 5 to have had the narrative they've had when one of them is the winner.
Yep. Yeah, that's so funny. I was thinking on the drive home, like how compelling the will Christian go with Mike and Angelina vote was, and how that had really no bearing on the end game whatsoever. But it was good. It was good TV for the time. But yeah, it's just such a long game with so many players that it's crazy how little that ended up mattering in the end.
Yeah, and we got the story out there, and obviously Mike was the one pushing this in the game. We talked about this at the time of like, oh, you can't trust Emily. Emily's going to screw you over just like Gabby did. But Emily was, Emily and Devins were completely loyal to Christian like all the way until he was voted out, and Emily never turned on him.
Right.
And even thought about it. It had nothing to do with Emily, and and being Suri who got him out because he was coming for Ozzy. And it's like that storyline went nowhere. And even looking at like Aubrey, right? Like Aubrey has a storyline, this kind of weird storyline at the swap with Coach, where like they form this kind of like bond. It feels like Coach is like going to use her as like a side alliance, and that also nowhere. And like that was like one of the only pieces of positive content we got from the first like 8 episodes from Aubrey is like Coach kind of reaching out an olive branch to her, and then it just didn't lead to anything. I guess maybe that's like one of the only, like maybe they had like 20 minutes tops of positive Aubrey footage from those first 8 episodes, and they just like shoved in anything they could. I don't know. That's like kind of what it feels like.
No, agreed. I think it's just 24 players. It's just so much.
Yeah,
that you're gonna end up. Yeah, like the first season of Australian Survivor. I can't remember what her name is, but there was this girl on it who's like fighting for her life and surviving by the skin of her teeth, and she still was the last pre-merger, but she survived like 10 votes or something. And it's just like, man, what a wasted time for her and for the show to talk about. So I think we're kind of a little bit in that same thing, where it's just like there's just so many players that obviously eventually you're not going to have these storylines pay off at all, even though they matter a lot in the moment.
I do want to call out too. As the Reddit sleuth, the resident Reddit sleuth of the podcast. It's one comment, but it's just like I do feel like a lot of people are thinking this way. Of somebody was like, well, I guess Rizzo learned from the best for taking out Suri, and somebody says, did Suri ever betray her allies like Rizzo does? Once again, every move Rizzo has made these past 2 weeks has 110% been the right move for his game. Like, without a doubt, if he wanted to put himself in the best position to win, Ozzy just turning into a complete idiot last week really is who you should be blaming completely for all this. But like taking out Ozzy at that point or not warning Ozzy at that point was the right move. Yeah. Taking out Suri here is 100% the right move, because if Rizzo doesn't do this, you're sitting there saying, what has Rizzo done to deserve to win? He's taken the best person in this game, like, to the end. So and I know it's one comment on Reddit with one upvote, which is probably the person that upvoted themselves. But it's just like, I think that a lot of people think this way when it comes to Survivor, and it drives me insane. I know I'm basically like saying water's wet at this point, but like there are some just really, really dumb takes about Survivor. I think that like a lot of it's subjective. You can like, people have their favorites, people have people that they dislike. But then I think there's just like not understanding the game and how the game works. Because at no point did Rizzo really betray anybody. I think Rizzo went with the flow. And I think also Suri very, very quickly realized she probably messed up taking out Devins and not more seriously considered taking out Rizzo when they were talking right before this vote. And I feel like it became obvious to her that Rizzo was probably flipping on her, because that is like the proper move and that makes the most sense. So once again, Rizzo has not played perfect. I think Rizzo does not even necessarily deserve to win this season, but I think the hate and the misunderstanding of his game is just it blows my mind that there's people that are watching the game with that lens.
Yeah, I've seen a lot recently, especially this season, like recently in terms of like the new era as well, where it feels like a lot of like newer fans are like anti people lying, which is very odd.
Yet they hate Joe. Yet they hate the Joes of the world. I think Joe's hilarious. I think he's a fantastic character, but he's not good. He's not good at the game.
Yeah. Well, I think that Joe is a hypocrite, right? Like,
why he's so funny. That's why he's a perfect character. He's so funny.
No, I agree. I think Joe this season has been like so obnoxious that it like wraps around to being kind of like campy and funny for sure. But like, Joe is not honest. He like the whole like honor and integrity thing. Like the reason that it's funny is it's like a meme because like Joe does not play that way. He just like yells about honor and integrity while like constantly lying and blindsiding people. It's very it's coach-esque, right? Like it's the same thing the coach does. And like I think the reason that people dislike
be careful there.
I think the reason that people dislike Joe, but there's like a much larger contingency of people that like Coach as a character is because Coach is like more entertaining and he's like a better presence on the screen, whereas a lot of times Joe can be kind of a fun suck and like an energy suck, but like in the moments where he's not, in the moments where he is kind of being like over the top hypocritical and like really kind of getting into it with Devons for no good reason, like he is very fun and it is funny and like in a campy way.
Also shout out that Australian Survivor player was Phoebe, who got voted off 10th on day 31.
I believe Phoebe did come back though, right? So
yeah, only to be pre-merged again on All Stars, but she was one of my favorites from that first season. I can't believe I forgot her name.
This is if Aubrey, assuming Aubrey makes Final Four, this is her fourth Final Four. If Exile,
no,
she was in fifth, right?
Yeah, she came in fifth in Game Changers.
So maybe it's fourth, fifth place finish. Maybe
this is her third Final Five.
Third Final Five. For what did she come in Game Changers?
Fifth.
She was Game Changers. She was fifth.
Yeah.
Obviously, Kalrung, she was technically second.
Yeah. Edge of Extinction, she came in like 16th.
Yeah, she was like
Edge was 16th.
Fifth person voted off.
I don't know. The Edge of Extinction math
doesn't count.
Odd.
Those numbers don't count.
Like placement math is like a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, so this is her third fifth place finish. There we go.
It's our third time in the top 5. Yeah,
we found ourselves. That's impressive.
Yeah. Ben, you were right. The Survivor Wiki has her as the 16th out of 18 players on Edge of Extinction.
Yep.
Even though she definitely lasted a little longer.
Yeah.
So
maybe it's because Rick re-entered, I think, and then also Chris re-entered. It fucked
Yep. That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, voted off day 13 as the fifth person, sixth person voted off. But the Edge messed up. So yeah, that was a bad showing from her, but I guess worth it if she wins this, to go through a pretty embarrassing third stint only to win this one.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't think that any of the returning player seasons had a chance of winning Edge of Extinction. That cast was like extremely anti-returning player in a way that we'd never really seen before in a mixed season. In kind of a similar way, I feel like a lot of the old school players this season are super anti-new era. So yeah, I just don't. I know a lot of people pre that season were joking about how like the twist was like just a way for the producers to rig the game for Joe, and they kind of like accidentally ended up rigging the game for Chris because it's a similar archetype in terms of just like young athletic dude who is not like a strategic mastermind, but is able to, take advantage of the game mechanics. But yeah, no, 100%. Like in retrospect, that season, just completely incapable for any of the 4 returning players to win. So,
which good on those first time players. I appreciated that they were like so anti-returning player.
Pretty much the only time in reality TV history where we had like a mixed season where the new players have done the objectively correct thing.
Yeah, and those are some good players, and I think without Edge of Extinction, We would have not had Rick Devens, which would have been sad for Survivor history. But I think if the education twist didn't happen, that people would look onto that season a little better, because I think you get like probably Victoria winning, and I think she would have been a really good winner. So justice for Victoria, bring her back. Where's her second chance?
I've seen how the EW like best winner votes have gone. I can confirm I have no interest in having a fan voted second chance. If we get down to that. Zero.
We saw this season how fan votes work.
We will not take the blame. We were this is one of the biggest bamboozlings that has ever happened in history. One of the biggest rug pulls that have come out is this is a fan voted season, as we know. This was not voted in the hands of the fans. This was, we give you 3 options for most of these, and we trick you. We trick the fans to think that they're picking, but really we're going to take the one that no one's picking.
Yeah, well, I mean, this would be a really fun thesis for like somebody who's doing their like master's or doctorate in political science to like do a thesis on this season as an example of how push polls work, because like that's just how it goes,
But I feel very confident. I do not want a fan voted second chance. I think we need to leave casting in casting's hands. I have no interest in seeing, especially we talk about a lot of the new fans. Love that Survivor gets new fans. That's obviously fantastic. I'm technically a newer fan. Do not want these people voting when it comes to Survivor. Get out and vote for your politicians. Do not get out and vote for a Survivor. Let's kind of end it.
Yeah. Well, get out and vote though for the America's favorite player. Go out and vote for Suri. I will strongly advocate for Suri.
Yeah, like Brent said in the chat, I don't really believe that the fan votes were that. They were going to do whatever they wanted, is essentially, and they were just going to lay it on us as our joke. So, Ben, you said that you're voting for Suri for favorite. Dylan, Dylan, who are you voting for?
Well, I have a lot to think about, to be honest with you, because I got a feeling it's really only between 2 or 3 people, like Ben called out to me earlier. But my heart, obviously, I want to vote for Coach, even though I can't, in good conscience, give him any more money until I receive the video of our interview together. I think that logistically needs to be worked out a little bit, but I know they're very busy over there at Dragon Slayer, so I'm no ill will there. But all due respect to Coach, I will withhold my funds for fan favorite out of respect for letting him and his team work things out. I want to give it to Rizzo because of how much shit Rizzo has gone through, and I think for how much he's played and the fact that he's still out there, I completely understand why it's going to go to Devens, Suri, or Ozzy. I get it. I guess if you're asking me of those 3 who I think should win it, I think Devens should win it for kind of the entertainment that he put on towards the end here, doing the Beast coin flip, kind of all that. I feel like that would be cool for him. But my assumption is obviously I feel like Ozzy or Suri are probably going to be the 2 that win it. Also, Devens has gotten the SIA donation reward thing before, right? So, I mean, I don't. Obviously, she's not picking this time, but I don't know if he gets it twice. Maybe he does. I don't know. I feel like it's probably going to be Suri or Ozzy though.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the top 3. I think I could legitimately see any of those 3 getting it. I hope that it's Suri. I wouldn't be upset if it's Devens, but I definitely would be a little bit sad because I think obviously as somebody who has spent the last 20 years essentially just waiting for Suri to win Survivor and going 6 for 6 in disappointment, it's just I want her to win something Survivor related. Obviously, she did win the Traders in definitive fashion, but it would be nice for her to at least get this as a consolation prize.
My dark horse is Christian. I don't think Christian wins, but that's my dark horse 4th place is probably Christian.
Yeah, Daryl in the chat says Suri will definitely get fan favorite. Brent wants to know if your man crush is fading, Dylan, on Coach. The longer you have to wait for your video.
I am insulted you would ask this such. I am a proud member of the Dragon Slayer tribe. I am the scribe of the Shadowed Library. So
Yep.
and I take that title very seriously. I had legitimately one of the best conversations I've ever had with anybody when I talked to Coach, and so I will not. When it comes to paying for goods and having goods given back, I will not let that get in the way of Coach and I's relationship as a mentor to me. And I'm not, I say this in a joking tone because I can't help but do that, but I'm not joking. And also Coach's potential friend of the podcast. Maybe he comes on, and I don't want to slander a guest that will come on and help us out. So no, my man crush will never end for Coach. But no, I would like the video though. That would be nice.
Yeah. I think a fun exercise that would be, now that, like, because I don't necessarily want to do this after the finale, so I think we should spend the finale mostly talking about the episode and the season. But I think we've kind of gotten enough information at this point to, like, make this call. Like, who are the people from the season who are going to play again?
Fun.
Let's see. Jonathan, for sure, will get invited back. Rick Devens, most likely.
Camilla.
I think Tiff has a really good shot at getting an invite. Rizzo, 100%. If he wants to, he'll get an invite again. Emily Flippin, I could see her playing again, even though she says no. I think she would if given the chance. Christian, maybe.
I feel like we're going to see a lot of potential returning players from you. I feel like the Aussies, the Cerise, the Chrissies, the Stephanies, obviously the Colbys. I don't think we'll be seeing them again. I don't even really necessarily rule out Coach, to be honest with you. I think there's a chance Coach plays again. But yeah, if you're asking me who I think is the most likely to play out of everybody that we've talked about, not including any winners, I would say. I feel like the winners obviously is the least likely that we'll see them play again. Yeah, I
mean, Brent says Kyle. I can see that.
I think Kyle's a good shout.
Yeah.
It depends on what the theme of the season is. Blood versus Water, I feel like there's a good chance we can see any of the winners back. A non like season like Blood versus Waters or Winners at War, which we've said we'll probably never see again. Yeah, I don't know. My gut tells me probably Devins. I like, that's just, I didn't think that a couple weeks ago, but since I was brought, I feel like probably Devins is like the most likely out of all of it.
I agree. I think Devins is my number one on the bullet too coming out of the season. I'd say Devins 1, Rizzo 2 in my mind as like the most likely people coming out of the season to play again. And Rizzo only just because like this feels like kind of one big story for him, and like it would be I think there is more to him if we like wait 4 or 5 years and then bring him back a third time after he's a little older. Like that feels like a cogent narrative. And I think like Devins is definitely earned a third season. And I came into the season again not a Rick Devens fan, like almost the opposite. Like I was not a fan at all of him on Edge of Extinction. I found his story to be exhausting, and I was very annoyed that they spent much of the season trying to portray him as a good player when I thought that he was not that great of a player. But he's proven me wrong. We got just enough of him, I think, in this season. I think he does a lot better as a character surrounded by other big characters, where he can kind of like intermittently take the spotlight in situations where it makes sense and make good TV here and there. So yeah, I think he just works better as a returning player than as a new player for me. So yeah, I'd be very happy to see him play again. I think he will.
I don't want to forget her. She says she won't play again. I think Genevieve, good chance we see her play again. I would actually maybe put Genevieve second, or even maybe up there with Devins. I feel like
Genevieve and Mark for Blood versus Water 3. I can see it.
Yeah. Blood versus Water, I feel like that opens up a whole bunch of different doors of who we can see again from this season. but I feel like Genevieve for sure. She says that's the season she would come back to play. I feel like she's saying she doesn't want to play because I think understandably she's probably very frustrated and a little bit embarrassed how the last season ended and how this season ended for her. But I feel like in terms of complete capability to show us how much she's evolved as a player, I feel like she's probably the most likely person I would suspect is going to return again. But Devin just feels so beloved and he loves Survivor so much. I think that speech about the stars and all that. I know obviously he's a little bit older than Genevieve, but I feel like Devin's just it's like a lock. And I feel like we've heard a lot of talk about Devins and his sons. I wonder if he like plays again with the son, depending on the ages.
Yeah, I think his son's somewhat young, so it'd probably have to be a while. But yeah, who knows? But yeah, I
highlight this in the chat. All right, so is Suri? So can I say that everywhere I turned, RHAP, they're saying Suri would curse Rizzo, blah blah blah, and she hopped right on bashing him. Rizzo fans know what's what though. So is Suri saying stuff about Rizzo online? I haven't seen that yet because we kind of jumped right on here, but that would kind of surprise me because I think they've been pretty, buddy in the like live shows and stuff. So maybe Suri was just pretending this whole time, and she was like, "Okay, now I can finally shit on Rizzo."
Listen, Suri obviously played an excellent game. Probably the best pound for pound like strategic performance on the entire season, but clearly her game heavily did still rely on the shielding with Ozzy and the information and the partnership with Rizzo, which is why I don't agree with anybody saying that Rizzo was carried. The argument that Ozzy was carried, sure, but I think Ozzy still brought a lot to the table to that trio. Suri clearly still needed Ozzy and Rizzo to get as far as she did. Like she was definitely the driving force, and strategically her moves were unmatched by everybody else. But it was Suri did not do it by herself. So I can understand the moment being upset with Rizzo, but I feel like if you're still upset with Rizzo after that, I think that's a little silly. I would be far more upset with Ozzy, which maybe she is too. But I also have not heard that interview yet.
Yeah, I think the like being upset at Rizzo for being disloyal, like that's silly. Like it's Survivor, but like I do think from my perspective this was an incorrect play. Again, I don't know. I was very defensive of Ozzy not telling Ozzy about the idol play from Rizzo last week. I thought that was correct from Rizzo. Here, at least my immediate reaction is that voting out Suri here over Aubrey was not correct for Rizzo. And it's probably a better way for him to like narratively move towards a win if he like beats Suri in fire making at Final Four. Like that kind of felt like the main way that he could potentially like grab some sort of win equity. Because like for me it's like a super narrow path. And like again, I think he needs to be there with Jonathan and Joe to even have like a a small minuscule shot. And even though I think the narrative of the episode gave him credit for this move on Suri, I don't think the jury is going to give him credit. I don't really think the credit will really matter. I think it would have been way more meaningful for him to like beat her in fire making at 4. And I think that also is like a more cogent path for him to get to a winnable final 3 anyways. So yeah, I don't know.
Is the right move to play the idol here on Suri?
No, because he could have just changed the votes. It seemed like he drove the vote. He could have just told Jonathan. He could have just gone on with Jonathan and Joan, but like, yeah, Suri's right. We should just cut Aubrey. Aubrey is a snake. She is a bigger threat at winning challenges. Like there was like they could have just not voted her out.
To not piss off Jonathan and Joe.
Yeah, like it really felt like if Rizzo said no, they wouldn't have voted out Suri.
Real peek behind the curtain there. Real Wizard of Oz we got going on behind here.
Yeah, the wizard is a fraud, you know.
But by the way, I don't know if anybody knew, I was not actually at Tribal Council, so I
Mhm.
do apologize if the illusion
Brian and
has
I
been
are there.
broken.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
Brian,
at Travel
yeah.
Council.
Mhm.
I would love to do a live show if we can, the three of us, an actual like fire pit while recording. That'd be very fun someday.
Telling stories about the Riz God.
Telling stories about the Riz God. Maybe an off-season podcast so we could do it at like a reasonable time, not 11:30 at night.
That does sound like something the scribe of the Shadowed Library would do, though. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else for this episode?
I'm very excited for next week. Excited, a little sad to not be talking Survivor. You know, well, we're going to keep the podcast going.
We're gonna keep the
also.
podcast going. Yeah.
A little sad to be taking a break from this season, though. I will admittedly, I am looking forward to kind of taking a break from Survivor discourse with like people outside of this, outside of our friends, outside of this podcast, kind of like having to dive into like the Reddits and the Twitters and seeing what's going on and all there. I'm looking forward to the break from that because I think a lot of people have a lot of really shitty, dumb takes that I don't like to read, but Survivor will keep trucking along, so I am looking forward to that. It will be the summer of Survivor for us. We'll talk about old seasons. Hopefully, get some interviews. You know, we'll rank stuff. We'll talk about 51. We'll talk about news and stuff like that. So, I mean, we'll still have a lot of the fun stuff to do at Survivor. But I feel like I'm definitely ready to take a little quick break from Survivor 50 talk, and as much as I have like this season, let my brain settle down a little bit.
Yeah, I think I kind of have a theory of people online, like if their profile picture is somebody who's like from an obscure season and like a pre-merger, the more insane their takes and rhetoric online is going to be. Like if they're standing somebody from a really mediocre Big Brother season who went out fourth, you just know that they're going to have the wildest takes and just act completely reckless online. But yeah, it certainly is a lot, Dylan. But hey, Big Brother is starting in July. So if you want to really get down in the mud with some reality TV people online, that's the place to do it.
Yeah, if you think Survivor fans are deranged and have insane opinions, yeah, you've not even seen, you haven't even scratched the surface, because the Big Brother fandom is 10 times as deranged and 10 times as bad at understanding how these games work, and 10 times as insane opinions. So
and
vocal, yeah, today
so vocal.
Yeah, and today we did get our premiere date for Big Brother 28, which is July 9th, which is less than 2
Can't
months.
wait. Probably a month from now ish, we'll get a cast, which will be fun to go over, and then we'll be locked in for the summer, doing probably lots of live streams of Big Brother this year. Yeah, I mean, this is Big Brother, or rather, Survivor 50 has been so fun. I'm really having like such a blast doing this, doing the TikToks over on GameBots. Go follow us there if you haven't already. And yeah, just thank you so much for checking this one out. Ben, anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
No, just really excited to talk about the finale in a week, and really happy to get a Big Brother 28 premiere date. And yeah.
Dylan, same thing. Any shout outs or anything you want to plug?
No, Wicked Good Show, which is Brian and I's other podcast. Follow us there. We'll be doing a new show maybe next week. Talking
probably next Tuesday. That worked out well.
I look like I have like a Doctor Strange like portal opening up.
You do.
Next to me to go to Tribal. So I'm gonna jump back through that. But follow us there, and then we'll be back next week. I'm sure that we'll have plenty to talk about and complain about and cry about next week. So I'm looking forward to that.
Shout out Brian Wong. Shout out Scott.
Shout out Brian Wong. And I guess Scott. Scott's a new listener, but we love all our new listeners, like Daryl, like Brent. Not a ladder.
Shout out not a leader.
Or not a leader. I don't have my glasses on, can't see. I do also want to shout out Saul from season 47. No particular reason. We were talking about Survivor, like thirst trap fan counts. I love Saul. I would love to see Saul play again too. So those are the good sides of fan counts. So shout out to the Saul Survivor. I'm gonna stop talking, but shout out Saul.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would like to see him in the vest again. That was a huge hit.
I know I would. with the
Yeah.
rain coming down. All right, let's clip that.
That was a look.
Set
There was a moment there in 47 where like everyone was like, "Oh my God, Saul's like a lock to be to return," and then I feel like it kind of fell off, and then like Operation Italy happened, and then like
Mhm.
there was so much focus on Genevieve and Andy. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Saul and Rome together again would be great, Dale. You're absolutely right.
yeah,
It's not right, Rome. But yeah, thank you all so much for watching this one. We'll be back next week for the finale of Survivor 50. Can't believe it's already going to be here, but it's been so fun to cover it, and I can't wait to see who wins.